It would be some type of alarm system.
You'll see how flood sensors can protect communities from rising water.
Flood sensor is relatively simple. This is completely self-contained.
We'll look back on Hurricane Beryl 1 year after it made landfall in Texas.
That we are right in the outer eye.
And the new research offering a look at the weather during the Battle of Gettysburg.
It could have felt to the soldiers who were prone on the ground in the sun in excess of 130 degrees.
From our nation's capital, this is the National Weather Desk.
Good morning and welcome to the National Weather Desk. I'm Angela Brown. More than 100 people are now confirmed dead following Friday's catastrophic flooding in Texas. That number is also expected to rise as search and rescue teams comb through swollen rivers and debris searching for those who are still missing. 10 girls and a counselor from Camp Mystic are among those still unaccounted for. Several factors are complicating search efforts. Yesterday, a private drone hit a rescue helicopter, forcing it to make an emergency landing. Lines of cars on the highway are slowing down fast. First responders, trying to get up rivers. And then there's the weather, which could turn rainy and hot again today. Lee Waldman begins our team coverage this morning.
After days of battling tough search conditions, determination to find every last missing person in the Texas floodwater persists.
It's our job never to assume or never presume that somebody's deceased. We're out here trying to find everybody alive.
In hard-hit Hunt, Texas, Christian Fell and his family are clearing feet of mud from their home, the home that nearly trapped him in rapidly rising water Friday morning.
When I opened the door, all this water started flooding back in. Didn't have any alerts until the water was already inside the house.
Across the Guadalupe River from Fell's home is Camp La Junta. Kelly Rabone's son, Braden and Brock, were saved from the rising water by their camp counselors.
Once the water came into his cabin, they moved the boys from their lower bunks to then the upper bunk, and then ultimately hoisted them up into the rafters.
But after the floodwaters rose over 30 feet, this is what it left in its path. All of them toppled, uprooted, destroyed. And the water came so high, it went all the way up to this family's home. In Kerrville, floods are a part of life. So in the early hours of Friday morning, Austin Donahue thought it was just business as usual.
Heard the water, not uncommon being on the river, and went and ate a piece of pie and drank coffee.
But it didn't take long for that pie to turn to panic.
I knew it was something abnormal when I saw at the level it was at, a house roof come by and a car.
Never have I ever seen it this bad. Nothing transpired, nothing ever occurred to where it was a wall of water as the magnitude as it was. Yeah, it's just devastation.
The aftermath is just that, devastation. The house that this family has made a home over the past 100 years, destroyed in a matter of moments.
We know there are no warning systems on the Guadalupe River. The county rejected them years ago as being simply too expensive, but that could soon change. Reporter Jay Avila is asking if more could have been done to warn the camps and also others in harm's way.
Texas Senator Ted Cruz said now is not the time for partisan finger-pointing, no doubt responding to a New York Times article claiming staffing cuts at the National Weather Service may have prevented officials from receiving an earlier warning, something the National Weather Service in New Braunfels denies.
What exactly transpired? What was the timeline? And what could have been done differently to prevent this loss of life?
We interviewed Kerr County Sheriff Larry Latha, who says he thinks some kind of flooding alert system will be approved in the wake of this disaster.
They're going to be having a special session. In that special session, they're going to talk about maybe funding some of those systems for counties and cities.
The devastation in Central Texas is putting the spotlight on one flood-prone area near Washington, D.C., and a flood gauge that serves as an early warning when creek waters rise. Brad Bell has more.
For the last 3 years, Montgomery County has been one of a handful of communities across the country equipped with devices like these placed along flood-prone streams and rivers and below dams to remotely detect rising waters.
The flood sensor is relatively simple. This is completely self-contained.
Luke Hodgson is County Director of Emergency Management. He says the sensors give him peace of mind at a time when the number of serious flash floods is on the rise. Floods like this in western Maryland just 2 months ago, or in Rockville in 2021, when a person lost their life.
We're seeing them more and more frequently. As we move into the summer months, we're expecting a very active season.
This is a good example. This is Sligo Creek, and over the decades, I have seen it rise from this tranquil little stream to raging floodwaters. Very quickly, it gets up over the banks, gets up there over Sligo Creek Parkway. They used to send a police officer down to keep an eye on it. Now, this monitor is here looking at it 24/7. The system was paid for by a recently shut down federal flood mitigation program, but it is operated and maintained now by the county, and Hodgson says he hopes to add more sensors. As for the tragedy in Texas, he says that water likely came up so fast and so high, even this early warning system may not have made a difference.
And I hope people will pay attention to those videos and see that in a matter of minutes, they can be met with a wall of water that wasn't there just minutes prior.
Questions about summer camp safety are now top of mind nationwide. Ed DiOrio shows us how camps in flood-prone areas of the Carolinas stay prepared.
Safety is always our primary goal. Risk management is all we do.
That's been the goal for Paige Lamel for nearly 40 years. She's counseled thousands of girls at Keystone Camp. 5 generations of her family have seen weather events impact the campgrounds. Throughout that time, adjustments have been made.
So we got rid of railings and things on our bridges that would prevent flow, and we've installed culverts to mitigate the water from top to bottom.
But the impact of weather is unpredictable. That's evident by the campers that are now missing at Camp Mystic in Texas. Shortly after, Lamel sent a notice to the families of her campers.
We had one phone call as we were trying to send the email out asking about landslide potential here.
While the Graham Creek runs through the site, that's not the biggest danger.
Fortunately, all of our sleeping quarters are high up on the hills.
Lightning strikes and fallen trees are.
We spend anywhere from $15,000 to $50,000 in a single year maintaining trees, trying to get out ahead of this stuff.
Additionally, Keystone installed the Perry weather system in 2019.
So when the girls hear the lightning alarm, it means that there is lightning happening within a 0 to 4 mile radius.
While incidents like Camp Mystic are rare, being prepared for them is something that camps throughout the mountains do every day.
1 year ago today, another weather tragedy struck Texas. Hurricane Beryl slammed into the state with wind gusts approaching 100 miles an hour. Emily Gracie looks back on the storm, its impact, and its legacy.
At times, we're getting hurricane-force wind gusts here, the torrential rainfall, the power flickering.
Just a week earlier, Beryl was a monster Category 5 storm, the earliest forming Category 5 in the Atlantic on record. Hurricane hunters flew into the eye, providing valuable data for meteorologists and researchers. By the time Beryl reached Texas, it was weaker, but still a dangerous Category 1 hurricane.
This is indeed. Yeah, we gotta go.
The pounding rains flooded communities along the Gulf Coast. The winds knocked out power to nearly 3 million people.
But it is still pretty strong.
Beryl also spawned tornadoes. The National Weather Service issued 110 tornado warnings, the most ever for a single day in July. Throughout the week, Beryl's remnants traveled through the South, Midwest, and up to New England, where flooding killed 2 people in Vermont. But the greatest impact was in Texas, where most of the 48 deaths blamed on the storm took place. NOAA estimates Beryl caused more than $7 billion in damage in the United States. Those numbers led the World Meteorological Organization to permanently retire Beryl's name. Helene and Milton would later join Beryl, making 2024 just the 3rd time in 16 years at least 3 names were retired in 1 year. For the National Weather Desk, I'm meteorologist Emily Gracie.
There's a threat of severe storms today along the I-95 corridor from New York City to Richmond, Virginia. Those storms are expected this afternoon and evening. That same region is also under a heat advisory, with the feel-like temperatures soaring to 105 or higher. And coming up on the National Weather Desk, we'll find out how Tropical Storm Chantal impacted residents of North Carolina. And we'll take a look at the role weather played at the Battle of Gettysburg.
Meteorologist Charlie Lopresti with a look at the Northeast. It's another warm and muggy day here in the Northeast. Most areas will top out in the 80s and 90s today. There's a chance for thunderstorms as well. So let's track those out. We're starting in the 70s. Let's take you through the afternoon. That's 3:30. Best chance for a strong to severe thunderstorm will be in New Jersey, southern New England, perhaps up into southern parts of Vermont, New Hampshire, and into southern parts of Maine. The temperatures won't be quite as warm on Wednesday, and the humidity will start to move out as well.
I'm Chief Meteorologist Gerard DeBailey. Here's a look at the Mid-Atlantic region. We're going to be tracking a stalled frontal boundary. This is going to lead to afternoon showers and thunderstorms, and this will be for not just your Tuesday afternoon, another round to come in on Wednesday. And these, again, could be strong to severe with damaging winds or even some flooding possible. Ahead of that front, very hot, mid-90s everywhere from New York down to Richmond. The Mid-Atlantic will feel the heat, and it will be very humid. Still pretty warm on Wednesday, highs in the upper 80s to low 90s.
I'm meteorologist Charlotte Carl. We are going to see seasonably warm afternoon high temperatures across the area. Upper 80s, lower 90s for most of us. We are going to see a little bit of that wedge effect as temperatures will be a degree or two cooler than what we will see kind of in the metro areas of the southeast. Now, we will start out your Tuesday dry, few onshore showers possible along the Gulf Coast. Now in the afternoon, widespread showers and storms, very typical for this summertime pattern.
You are watching the National Weather Desk.
At least 3 deaths in North Carolina are blamed on Tropical Depression Chantal. The storm brought heavy rain and at least 4 tornadoes to the state over the weekend. Alexis Cooper takes a closer look at the impact.
Flash flood warnings were issued across Lumberton, where several streets quickly became impassable. This video, captured by Pastor Joshua Owens of First Baptist Church on Walnut Street, shows a driver stuck in high water, forced to abandon their vehicle. Owens says the sudden downpour swamped downtown roads and parking lots, making it nearly impossible for many to attend church services.
Several areas around our facility became very overwhelmed by the flash floods that were occurring. And for us and several other congregations here in downtown, many of our areas were inaccessible, either directly on the facilities in the parking areas or the roads around downtown just would not allow safe passage.
Resident John Jones works in downtown Lumberton and says flooding is a reoccurring problem, pointing to long-standing drainage issues.
I think the travel up and down the roads, it limits the people coming through. Our business, we have a lot of older patrons that come in, and they don't like to get on the road to come this way because of the rain.
The National Weather Service urges residents to avoid driving through flooded roads and seek higher ground when flash flood warnings are in effect. Locals say the water began to recede within hours.
A new warning about ticks this morning. Experts say portions of the Northeast are in what they are calling a tick boom. We know deer ticks carry Lyme disease, but doctors are seeing another disease called babesiosis. Adriana Hopkins has more.
They've never seen more ticks. We've had such frequent rainfall that it's been very permissive for ticks. They're very comfortable.
And they hide from the sun in shaded areas, much like humans, making us more vulnerable to their bites and the diseases like babesiosis that may come with them. Retired Army entomologist Ellen Stromdahl described a patient who'd contracted the disease.
He had the best medical care and teams trying to figure out why he was fainting, why his red blood count was dropping, his eyes were yellow, his skin was yellow. They thought heart They thought kidneys, they thought organ failure, something cardiac. Finally, they tested him for tick-borne diseases, and he was positive for babesiosis.
10 years ago, babesiosis cases were unheard of in our area. The symptoms are similar to the flu, easy to brush aside.
You feel terrible, and then you kind of feel better. So he just assumed he'd get better, and he didn't. He died.
The Defense Department's Mill Tick program tracks ticks across the U.S.
Yesterday, we probably had 80 ticks in the mail from all over the country, all sorts of different species. It's a whole wild world out there.
Here are some ways to reduce the risk of being bitten by a tick. Avoid tall grass and wooded trails, wear long sleeves, and if you're bitten, remove the tick with tweezers and save it for testing. You shouldn't be concerned about parts of the tick being left under your skin.
The reason that ticks are so hard to pull out is not because they're buried under there. They have these sharp little fish hooks on their hypostome, on that drinking straw that kind of keeps them in there. And they also secrete a biological cement, and they actually glue themselves to your skin.
The scorching heat that gripped Pennsylvania during the Battle of Gettysburg has always been part of Civil War lore. Now, groundbreaking meteorological research reveals the full extent of weather's influence on the entire Gettysburg campaign. Emily Gracie spoke to Dr. John Neese about how he reconstructed the atmospheric conditions of those fateful July days.
We started on June 3rd, 1863, which is considered the beginning of the campaign, and we looked at the weather every day for the next 42 days, which takes us to July 14th, which was the day when Lee finally recrossed the Potomac to get back into Southern territory. And it featured some really interesting weather, some of which was known a little bit about. I mean, they knew there was a big heat wave, but nobody knew how hot it was, really.
What were weather instruments like in 1863?
At that time, the Smithsonian was running a network of observers. There were the observers who didn't have any instruments, so they basically reported the rain started at 2 o'clock. Then there were observers who had thermometers. There were observers who had barometers. And then there were observers who had the humidity instrument, the psychrometer. We ended up mining data from the Naval Observatory in Washington, D.C., and they observed, get this, 8 times a day, pressure, temperature, something called the wet bulb temperature, which enables you to get humidity. They even had a thermometer sitting a couple inches above the grass in the sun, so you could get a sense of what it felt like to be outside in the sun near the ground, like a soldier might be.
Can you give me a little overview of what the weather was like during the battle?
We feel pretty confident the heat index was 100 or higher. It could have felt to the soldiers who were prone on the ground in the sun in excess of 130 degrees. And then once the battle ended, it rained a lot.
Yeah, tell me about the river.
When they crossed the first time, the water was maybe up to their knees. But when the Confederates tried to retreat, a few of them got across on July 4th and July 5th, but then the river got too high. And as best we can tell, it may have peaked at 15 to 20 feet. So Lee was effectively trapped in Williamsport, Maryland. And the last Confederate soldiers crossed the river back to the safety of the southern side of the river by around lunchtime on July 14th, 1863. That's when the story of the Gettysburg campaign ends.
This is the topic of this week's episode of our podcast, Off the Radar. To hear more from Dr. Neese, including the NOAA tools he used to recreate the weather in 1863, listen to the full episode anywhere you get your podcasts. Well, today we have several ways we can forecast the weather and protect ourselves from it. One tool that can help us is called the UV index. Meteorologist Teresa Carter explains what it is.
The UV index is a measure to help you determine the effects of the sun on outdoor activities. Understanding the UV index is essential for protecting your skin and eyes from harmful ultraviolet radiation. It takes into account factors such as the sun's height in the sky, the time of year, cloud cover, altitude, the thickness of the ozone layer, and ground reflection. Then it wraps all of that information up into a single number. Now remember, beachgoers should know that sand and water reflect UV and can make the UV index even higher. When the UV index is 1 or 2, your skin may only need minimal sun protection. A rating of 3 to 7 means the risk is moderate to high, and SPF 30 or higher is recommended to stay safe. If the UV index is 8 or higher, your risk of sun damage is very high. Wearing sunscreen, protective clothing, and sunglasses, or seeking shade, especially in the late morning through mid-afternoon. The UV index is typically highest during this time of the day, as the sun is at the highest point in the sky. Now, some exposure to sunlight is good. However, too much sun can be dangerous. Overexposure to the sun's ultraviolet radiation can cause immediate damage, such as sunburn, and long-term problems, such as skin cancer.
And before a short break, we take in views over Baltimore's Inner Harbor.
Well, a very good Tuesday morning, everyone. I'm meteorologist Andrew Michael, watching some scattered showers and storms move their way across the Ohio Valley for the day today, and a few down there in the southern plains. So it's going to be a bit of an active day for some of us. The good news is severe weather, not a great likelihood of it for the day today. Jumping into tomorrow, still very warm, 80s and 90s across most of the Midwest, a few 70s there closer to the Great Lakes, repeating that Thursday.
Good Tuesday morning to you. Meteorologist Chris Suchan. Look at our forecast today across the region. Should be able to catch a much needed break across a good chunk of Texas after all the flash flooding. There is the risk for a few shower storms to come in off the Gulf late in the day. Up to the north, scattered strong to severe storms. Oklahoma, we'll be watching out for you. Highs in the 80s and 90s. And on Wednesday, here too, a chance for some showers and storms, particularly as you work towards the Gulf Coast. Otherwise, it'll be temperatures that'll be in the 80s and 90s with sunshine up in Oklahoma City.
Hi there and a good Tuesday morning to everybody. I'm meteorologist Shannon O'Donnell. Out west, a lot of heat hanging out in the interior. Look at that, 99 out of Spokane, 103 out of the Treasure Valley and Boise, and 109 out of Vegas. That's extra hot for the Sin City area. We'll see temps back into the 80s and the 90s as well for Seattle and Portland, but some relief on the way later this week. Next weather maker will be some rain on Wednesday morning. And that's the scene from here.
You are watching the National Weather Desk.
Sunday marked a major tornado anniversary in Myrtle Beach, Florida. Meteorologist Jenna Warner takes a look back.
Now in this video, you actually see the tornado get bigger here in a little bit. This is the tornado on the ground doing damage. This is actually debris being spun around the tornado. And you actually get to see the funnel here as well in this video. It becomes more condensed, and that just means the tornado is getting stronger. And it was a strong tornado. It did result in damage. Check out that tornado in Myrtle Beach. That was July 6, 2001. That's 24 years ago. Now, what set up that tornado to be the way it was? We had a cold front that was moving north across the area that came into contact with the sea breeze, and that actually caused winds to turn with height. That's something called wind shear, and that's one ingredient you need for tornadic activity. You also need a lot of moisture near the ground, a lifting mechanism, which are these fronts, and dry air aloft, and that was everything in place. So we did see an F2 tornado. It traveled 4 miles, and it traveled interestingly south parallel to the coast, and it did result in 36 injuries.
Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Angela Brown. Make it a great day, and I'll see you right back here tomorrow.